of his territory.
You know, he had such a flawless start in the games in '84. I looked up at about the 5th hurdle, and Edwin was so far out there that I thought to myself, there's no way I'm catching him.
When he just kind of relaxed into his stride, he kind of just left the rest of us behind.
I felt that if I went out and ran the race that I'm capable of running, I wouldn't have any problems, but it's been a long uphill road, and I've been very fortunate not to have any injuries, and I just feel very lucky.
You got the feeling then that this was a guy that could destroy the event if he wanted to. He had an aura about him. It was just like a man who was in the zone, in his moment, and it was effortless.
Representing the United States of America, Olympic champion Edwin Moses.
I had a good day at the office.
Moses had already achieved so much, but his passion remained as strong as ever. He still had his unbeaten run, stretching back to 1977, to protect.
What made him unique is that he was able to come back time and again, year after year, and still respect the opposition, even though he was clobbering them in 90% of the cases, and motivate himself to go for the next level.
Initially, there wasn't the mystique. I think he gained that when he started to become unbeaten after a few years. And then that became the whole mystique. It became an obsession, I think, with him.
For Moses, preparation was always the key.
I competed about 15 minutes a year at the end of the year. That's all it comes out to, and 9-10 months of training to be able to do that. So the races, you know, for me are not a really big part of it because everything happens so fast and there's really so small amount of the time versus everything else that you did to prepare.
By 1987, he had won 122 races spanning almost a decade. But Olympic silver medalist Danny Harris had been steadily closing the gap.
When Danny came on the scene, was a very precocious talent, and you knew it was only a matter of time when he'd win something.
I don't think I ever spoke to Edwin in '84. I'm quite sure I didn't speak to him in '84, and that was okay. It was the fact that in the last 36 months, he's the only person that had beaten me, and I took it personal, and I wanted to beat him. I needed to figure it out. So every waking moment, every bit of food that I ate, every mile that I ran, every weight that I lifted, every time I didn't do something that I wanted to do in lieu of going to sleep and getting some rest for the next day, it was all geared towards being the first guy to beat him.
That chance would come on June the 4th, 1987, in Madrid.
We got on the track and I thought, you know, this is really about to happen. And I felt at the height of my powers, and they shot the gun. When we got to 200 meters, I'd never been so close to him before, and I thought, it's really on now. By the time I got to 8, I knew I was going to win.
I never forget, news break. Edwin Moses loses to Danny Harris. The streak has been broken. I'm going, man.
The reason why I didn't throw my hands up when I crossed the finish line when I beat him, it was because I respect him. But I didn't do it because Edwin never did it to us. I told him, you're still a great champion. He said, I know. And that was about it.
The end of his great run did not deflate Ed Moses' self-confidence, however.
The winning streak is not that important. I think now what's important is for me to run fast times and faster than I've run before. And I know that I can run under 47 seconds, and I think that in the end, I'll be ahead by 5 to 8 meters no matter what.
But going into the 1987 World Championships in Rome, an air of invincibility had gone. The two men who had bookended his unbeaten run, Harold Schmidt and Danny Harris, sensed their chance.
There was a feeling that it could be far tighter race than we were used to. And yeah, and the final showed that.
It would be the greatest race of the Ed Moses era.
200 meters, Edwin came past me on the inside. I saw him, and it disturbed me a little bit because when he went past me, he didn't go past me and settle. He went past me and got out there, and then he settled. So when he got out there, he was out there about 7 or 8 meters.
You never really know until you finish the 10th hurdle what's going to happen.
I had the best spectator seat because I was just 5 or 6 meters behind those guys, all gunning for the line, kind of diving over it, and nobody knew. Not even I didn't know who was the winner.
A lot of people say it was the greatest 400-meter hurdle race in history. Harold Schmidt, Edwin, and myself for photo finish. 3 more meters, it would have been mine. But as it was 400 meters, it was his for that day.
Those 3 were kind of the outstanding ones over that decade, and that 87 kind of brought everything to a crescendo.
It was the narrowest of wins, but a moment of huge pride for Ed Moses. No longer perhaps the force of old, but his talent had inspired those around him.
Sometimes you have these world-class leaders who drag everybody else along with them in their vortex. Breaking that sound barrier brought everybody else along a notch or two.
After more than a decade in the event, Moses still pursued success. The 1988 Olympics were in Seoul, and Moses, now 33, targeted a 3rd gold medal, 12 years after his first.
I think one of his uniquenesses is the length of time he could motivate himself.
He just ran and executed. He didn't change his game plan one bit. The only thing that probably changed was his turnover, his touchdown time, and his fitness.
By 88, though, he was now very much a grandee. Good, but a grandee.
Lane 3, number 1114, Edwin Moses, USA.
Despite his age, Moses was favourite for the Olympic final.
I was lucky to have the opportunity to race next to him, line up next to him, to be a part of, I guess, his history, his revered history.
But history would not be enough. After a blistering start, Moses faded in the final 100 metres. Compatriot Andre Phillips took gold. Moses, for the first time in his career, had to be content with bronze.
Edwin finished the race, kind of made an assessment of him placing top 3, and then he walks off. Here's a guy who won 2 gold medals. He's like, well, I got a bronze.
It was not the happy ending he craved. It was time for Edwin Moses to leave track and field.
He'd climbed every mountain, and he'd done everything that a person could do in our sport, and that was one of the things I respected him the most about. He did not need to hang around and run a series of 49-second races just to be Edwin Moses. He left not at the height of his powers, but he left it on his own terms, and I thought that was very important for him and also for his legacy, and I respect him a lot for it.
After retiring in 1989, Moses' career was varied. He enjoyed a brief stint with the US bobsleigh team and a career in finance before being elected chairman of the Laureus World Sports Academy in 2000.
I think most people look at and expect you to, be a track and field athlete and no more, but I've done a lot of different things.
But it will be on the track where he will be best remembered. 2 Olympic gold medals, 2 World Championship golds, 4 world records, and nearly a decade of unrivaled dominance. Edwin Moses, the greatest hurdler of all time.
He broke record after record after record, and it was the dominant force in the event that we all just had to sit back and learn.
Edwin was one of those phenomenal athletes that comes along every once in a lifetime.
Well, the greatness comes, obviously, of being unbeaten for such a long time. You can keep a long streak going if you don't compete against the best, but he never shunned away from the best people.
I think for just sheer unbelievable consistency and progression, to have someone who could compete for 10 years unbeaten, 122 races I think it was, is quite extraordinary, and I think he should be put alongside the Jesse Owens in the Hall of Fame as someone who was one of the greatest athletes we will see in track and field.